Perfect.
All right, well, good morning everybody, and I'm super excited to be here during your school holidays. My name is Bess and I'm an artist and I'm an art educator, and I'm so excited to be here providing these fantastic Wello breaks for you at RACQ. It's really important in our everyday life to give ourselves a break, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be a cup of tea. It can be a walk in the park, or it can be something creative. And creativity is a funny old thing. I think we're brought up in schools to believe that you're born with some artistic talent, and that's not really the truth. It's the same as running a race. At the end of the day, if you practice anything, you can get better. And it's not really about how good you are. It's about having a go and trying something different and giving yourself, in fact, I'm going to give you permission today to do a really bad job if you do a bad job. It's okay, because art isn't necessarily about the end thing that you create. Sometimes it is, but it's also just about enjoying it. When we enjoy art, we exercise a different side of our brain than when we do at school or when we do at work. We use the right-hand side of our brain, which gives us all the creative ideas, inspiration, imagination. And this is great at school when you're thinking of problems or you're trying to create new games for the playground, or it's great for work when you're stuck in a situation and you've been looking at the same problem day in, day out, and you just don't know how to get around it, how to find a new approach. So that's why art's really great. And I want you just to believe that anyone can do this. I'm going to create a beautiful picture today inspired by Harry Potter, the Phoenix rising, because I think it's really a great symbol after this year. You know, the borders are starting to open at Queensland today, in fact, and we're starting to venture into a whole new world of actually living with COVID-19. And so the Phoenix is a symbol of rising from the ashes and having new prosper and, you know, a sense of beginning, new beginnings. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't do the Phoenix absolutely perfectly, okay? It's just an image, it's an idea, and it's there as an inspiration for you. So don't feel too bad, but I'm gonna do it in shapes, and I'm gonna do it in styles like the letter S to make it as easy as possible. I asked you guys to get some materials ready. Now, I'm going to paint in watercolours today because I think probably that's what most of you might have at home. Some of you children may have these kind of watercolours that you get from Kmart. These are brilliant. The great thing about watercolours, mums and dads, is there's not too much mess. And look, these ones I've had for 15 years, so they last for forever. If you didn't have watercolours, I sent you a link, because I like to believe that art can be done using anything. So these are some watercolours that I made up. And if you haven't had a go at this, you can do this yourself. So all I did was break open some textures, some felt tip pens, as I would call them in England, but textures. And when they're really dried out, you can pull the insides out, put them in a tiny glass bottle, and they will make watercolour for you. They won't be as bright as normal paints, but you can still get beautiful results and you can still enjoy creating with them. So if you haven't had a go of doing that, you can do. If today you're going to use textures, felt tip pens, or maybe you're just going to draw along with me, that's also okay. The way I believe art should be, she says as she drops her pencil, the way I believe art should be is it should be whatever you can do. You don't have to have exactly the right things. You don't have to have expensive materials. You just have to have a willingness. And that's what we're going to do today. So here's my piece of paper. I'm going to start off with a pencil, and I've got a rubber. Now, I try not to use rubbers or erasers too much because I just think it gets a little bit messy, but feel free. If it makes you feel happier, then use one, okay? We're going to start off doing a very light drawing. Now, what do I mean by light? Well, if you press hard, I'm going to get a spare piece of paper. If I press a line super hard, children, like this, I get a really dark line. Let me bring that close to the camera. You can see. It's a really dark line. But that line is going to shine through on our paint, okay? If I press a little bit lighter, which means my hand isn't pressing hard, let me bring that one to the camera. You can see, you can still see the light. The line. You can still see where it is, but it'll only be faint, all right? And if you wanted to rub it out, you could rub it out and you wouldn't have that, you know, sometimes when you do a drawing and it leaves that kind of great big indentation, which is super annoying. Well, if you don't press so hard with your hand, it won't leave that indentation, okay? So I'm going to ask you today to draw super light because we're going to paint on top of it. All right, this is the top hand side, the right hand side. This is my left hand side. And we're going to start by knowing where the center of our paper is. So just run your finger up and down the center of your paper, and then let's go across the center this way so you kind of get an idea where things are. Now we're going to start by putting our phoenix up here, which is in the top corner of our picture. So our phoenix is going to be flying through the sky, and we're going to do a kind of Hogwarts in the corner, all right? So I think all of you know what the letter S is. I'm pretty sure you do. So let's start off with the letter S. My pencil's going to be up here. Now I'm going to say to you, draw softly, but I am going to draw hard. And the reason why I'm going to draw hard is so that you can see it on the paper. Is that okay? But don't you do it as hard as me. All right. So I'm starting up in the top right-hand corner, and I want to do a letter S, but a letter S that's really swoopy, as if someone's gone and stretched it. Okay, here we go. Up here, around, down, and stretchy S. A big stretchy S. Now I've gone to about halfway, can you see that? If you haven't gone far enough, do a little bit further. If you've gone too far, don't worry, it's going to be part of the tail. Okay, so you don't need to rub anything out. Now once you've done that shape, the next shape is super easy because we're going to copy that shape underneath. I want you to curve it down a little bit more, and then we're going to go under. We're going to go a little bit thinner here, and we're going to widen it. So watch me. Thin here, widen, and round. Thin here, widen, then round. So it's wider here than it is there. Good job. All right, now this side is going to be the wing, and it's going to go off the paper. Ready? From about 2 centimeters below the head, off the paper. And the other wing is going to go up here, and it's going to go to the top of our piece of paper. So if this is halfway, it's going to end up just a little bit over from halfway. Here we go. Up like that. So you can see the wings are, if I put my arm out, they're flying like that, right out wide. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to go right, I'm going to move my clip because I'm doing mine, you might be on a table, but mine's up vertical. And we're going to start to put the wings in, the bottom of the wings. Now, birds' wings are longer at the very tip of the wing than they are when they come up to the body. So watch me, I'm going to do a letter U, okay? A letter U. I'm going to start here, I'm going to do U, 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 U. And I'm going to get smaller and closer until I get to the body. Now this is just a guide for us later when we're painting, okay? So don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. And we're going to do exactly the same, but opposite. So it starts and it's just going to go out. Now you can't see the rest of that wing because it's gone off the page. We might decide when we're painting that we want to make them bigger or longer, and we can. This is just laying things out. Okay, then the tail is going to come off here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a big kind of rainbow. Like that, and like that. And that's all I'm going to do right now because we're just drawing it in and marking it in, okay? When we paint, we'll start to shape it, but right now we're just getting the shape of our phoenix. Okay, let's go down towards the bottom. What I might do is I'm just going to lift it up and I'll bring it close just so you can have a quick look. If mum and dad is there, children, or you've got an iPad, as I bring it in, you can always take a little screenshot, okay, if that makes it easier for you. But I'll keep bringing it in because I know the pencil is a little bit light so you can see that drawing. There you go. All right, let's clip it back and let's go to the bottom of our picture. Okay, the bottom of the picture down here. This is the very bottom of my paper, and I think I'm up, well, let's have a look, about a thumb, I reckon. So if you've got tiny thumbs, you might want to do a thumb and a bit. And we're going to do a landscape. Now you can make your landscape whatever shape you want. Look at me, I'm going to do a hill, then another hill and another hill. Kind of like a whoopy swoopy hill line. Good job. And I want to have another hill line behind it. So to make it look like it's one of those hills that go in the distance, we're going to go in and pretend it goes through, back up. So you're going to make the hills just slightly different positions than the ones in the front. So it looks like it's another layer of hills in behind. And then just to make it super special, let's do a third run of hills. Now you might not want to do hills right across. You might just want to do one and maybe one over here. And there you've got sort of a nice landscape that's coming forward. One hill in the back, the second layer here, and then the third layer at the front. Okay, let's draw a line right underneath those hills. That's going to be our water line. So you know in the film, in Harry Potter, the Hogwarts castle is surrounded by a big moat, isn't it? So this is going to be our water line here. It's coming together. I have faith in you. Okay. Now, I always think when you're doing these sort of pictures, it looks really nice if you get that beautiful, moody nighttime look. So I'm going to put, you can put it wherever you want. You can have a moon here, you can have a moon here, up here. I'm going to kind of do it down here as if it's like one of those, sometimes you see those really large moons in the sky when it's changing. Yeah, let's have one of those. So I'm going to kind of make it sink behind my hills. So I've got a sinking large moon. Makes it kind of special and magical. Okay, now I'm going to say to you, we're going to draw Hogwarts. Now, if I said to you, we're going to draw a drawing of Hogwarts, you'd all go, oh, but I don't want you to feel scared. It is just shapes. So it is squares, triangles, rectangles, and an arch. Now, I know all of you can do that at school. We all do that in math. So it's pretty easy. And if you end up and you're doing it next to your brother and your sister or your work colleague in the office, if you end up with a different kind of Hogwarts, then fantastic. You've got a new magical wing. It does not matter, okay? Just create what you want to create. Hogwarts is going to be down here, or it doesn't have to be Hogwarts. Could just be a mythical fairy kingdom. And we are going to put in kind of like a big space like this, as if this is a rock. Doesn't really matter what shape it is. Let me show you straight away so you don't get too worried, because we're going to paint it in silhouette, which means we're going to paint it in black. So you can see I've just done a big shape where my Hogwarts is going to sit. All right? Let's pop that back up there. Okay. And the first thing we're going to do is a rectangle right in the middle. A nice big rectangle. And I'm going to apologise because I'm doing it from the side and I'm doing it upright. It might not be a perfect rectangle. That's okay with me. Okay, there's my rectangle. Looks like it's a bit narrow in the middle. That's okay. On top of our rectangle, let's put a triangle. And if your triangle overhangs your rectangle, that's also okay, because it kind of looks like one of those, you know, roofs that overhang the tower. Okay, now I'm going to do a big rectangle. It's going to go all the way to the side of my piece of paper. On top of that rectangle, I'm going to do another one that's going to go horizontal. It's like a big game of Jenga. So I've got one rectangle that goes up, one that goes across, and now we're going to put 3 rectangles. 1, 2, 3 on the top. And on the top of those, we'll put 3 triangles. And that's going to be our center tower. I want you to have a go at putting in some windows, Put them wherever you want. You can make them curvy arch windows if you want. You can have one or two. You can have a couple on this tower. Like that. And now we're going to put a line. This is our walkway. It's going to go all the way around and back to itself. It's kind of like the walkway that Harry and his mates go on. And then in here, we're going to put some arches like it's a bridge. Okay? If you don't get this exactly right, it doesn't really matter. And if you don't want to do it, that's also okay. So that's my Hogwarts. You can put a big door if you want to. Let me bring that one forward for you so you can have a good look at how I drew my Hogwarts. We kept it really simple, nice and easy, but that's enough shape for us to start to paint. If you wanted to add in another tower, you can. All right, guys, I reckon we should start painting. What do you think? Now, when I paint a painting like this, I always start with the background first. With watercolours, it's a bit tricky because watercolours are thin, which means if you make a mistake, unlike acrylic paints or thick paints, poster paints, you can't really go over it, which is why I've drawn it out so that we can try and go around our phoenix. If you do have a rubber and you want to rub out some of your lines because you made a mistake or they're too thick, you can do that before you start painting. Just give it a light rub. But I don't mind if mine show through, so I'm okay with that. Okay, I've got 3 different brushes. You might only have one at home, and that's okay as well. I've got some big ones, a bigger one, a medium one, and a little one, okay? I'm going to paint most of it with this middle one. So it's like a normal size brush. And the first thing we're going to do is paint our night sky. Now, I'm going to start off. I could leave my moon white, like a moonlight, but I think I'm going to make it a yellowy colour, like it's a lovely golden moon. So because it's the lightest colour, I'm going to start off by putting that moon in bright yellow. With watercolours, the more water you put on your brush, the wetter your paint will be and the more runny it will be. So if you just have a little bit of water and you go round and round, you'll get a lot of paint that comes out on your brush and then you'll get a brighter colour. The other option is that you do 2 coats. So in a minute, this will dry really quickly and you can come back and paint it brighter if you want it. So that's my moonlight. Let's say you decided you wanted it to be a moon that is a little bit paler and you've done it too dark. Just use a cloth like this and you can just sponge it on top and you can take some of that colour off and it will go a bit paler. So there's always ways that you can get around things if you make a little mistake. Or not a mistake, but you just don't like it. Okay, while I've got the yellow, I'm going to paint in my windows for Hogwarts. So I'm just going to paint in those little yellow windows. I'm not going to paint the door. I think the door would be brown, wouldn't it? Because it'd be a big door. So I'm just painting in my windows. Oh, I've got one more there. And then the other thing I want to paint, which seems a bit strange, but sometimes when you are painting, children, you don't have to paint exactly as you think. Like you wouldn't necessarily paint all of the phoenix first. It's good to paint things in the right order. And sometimes when you're doing watercolour, the right order is doing the lightest colour first. So I want some yellow in my wings and my tail. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to paint the very ends of my phoenix tail in yellow. By the time I do my orange, this will be nice and dry and I'm going to do the same with the wings. So I'm just going to scoop. I can see where my lines were. I've gone a bit deeper than my line. My line is here, but I've just made that wing a little bit longer. It feels like it just needs to be a bit longer. And it doesn't matter if your pencil shows through, it'll just look like part of the design. So I've done all my lightest colour first. So that's really great. might put a little bit on the top of the head as well. There we go. All right, I'm going to wash my brush. And every time I wash my brush between my colour change, I'm going to wash it and then I'm going to dry it on a piece of kitchen paper, or I just use an old face cloth or a piece of towel. And that keeps my brush super clean. Sometimes one of the biggest mistakes we make, kids, is that we have a dirty brush or we have dirty water. So if your water gets super dirty, just go and get some fresh, some clean water. Okay, now I want to do my sky next. Now I want my sky to start off and get darker. So I'm going to pick, you might have one blue, you might have two blues, or you might have three blues. We're going to start off with the lightest colour blue. And the reason why I start off with the lightest blue is I can always add more blue to it and make it darker. But if I start off super dark, I am not going to be able to take it off. So we're going to go round our moon. Now Karen's got to be super careful here because mine is upright, my paint is going to run. And I don't want it to run in the moon. So I'm just going to try and make sure it goes round the moon like that. And I want to be careful because also if it goes on that yellow, what colour am I going to make? Yellow and blue make green. And I don't want a green moon, to be honest. So I've done my lightest blue there. Now I'm going to get my next blue. If you don't have a next blue, just wait for it to dry a little bit. Keep going with the same blue. And when you want to make it darker, you're just going to do two coats. So I've got another tone of blue here. So I'm going to do a darker shade just there. If you're using crayons or textures, then you're going to do exactly the same as we're doing here. But when we come to blending the colours, you're going to put your colours on top of each other to blend the colours through. It's a bit easier with paint to blend through. When you're doing textures, if you're using textures, children, the way to do it is to leave a little bit of space. So if you think all of my fingers are the yellow lines, leave some space in between. And then when you do the orange, you're going to put the orange in the spaces next to the yellow. And then you get a kind of crisscross of colour. Okay, this blue, I'm going to go all the way down to my castle. And I'm going to go round my castle really carefully, round my little bridge. And I need to do those little bits, look, where we've got those archways. So it looks like the archway goes right through. I painted that one yellow and it should have been blue. Even I make mistakes, that's okay. Let's paint it blue now. It's gone a bit green, but I'll add some more blue in a minute. All right, so I'm going to go round my castle. Go round the turrets. The lovely thing about watercolour is that you get this sort of mottled. What do I mean by mottled? It means that the paint kind of moves around with the water. It doesn't become really flat like acrylic paint, so it looks really pretty. And it's great for doing sky and water because it gives you that kind of airy look. I'm just going to go around my little turrets here. Down in between the castle. And along the bottom. Okay, so I've kind of gone halfway up. And now if you've got a darker blue, this is where we're going to go for a darker blue. Because as you know, when the sky gets dark at night time, as it rises high, it goes darker. Until you're right up in outer space and it's black. But we're not in outer space at the moment, but I am going to put some dark blue around Mr. Phoenix. Going careful around his little wings there. And just let the colours bleed together. Now I've got to come up here. Making sure I've got enough paint. And I'm going to move my clip, look, because I need to go round the edge of that wing. I hope you guys have had a lovely holiday so far. We've got a long weekend coming up, so Mummy and Daddy will be on a break as well. And the sun is out, and Queensland is a fabulous place to be enjoying the holidays. I had a couple of days with my children and my husband, and we went to the Gold Coast and we did some theme parks, which was fantastic. And I got back yesterday. So it was really nice to have a break. I run holiday classes through the holidays, so I've got another holiday class tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm painting. Who knows that film, How to Train a Dragon? Do you know that film? Yeah, tomorrow we're doing dragons, which is also really fun. All right, but that's in my studio, whereas you guys get to do it at home. You're really lucky. So there's my dark blue. And now I just need to do the top up here. So Karen, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to move this clip on the corner. And I'm going to go right up in this top corner here. So hopefully you're starting to see that the sky's got a little bit darker up in the very top. Now we are going to add some black in a minute. But if we added black for the night sky to start off with, it would just be too heavy. It would be too dark, too heavy. And so I didn't want to go straight with black. I wanted to go with this lovely blue. And if you're doing this, because I am going to save this tutorial, and if you're doing this and you haven't done it live and you're doing it later, and you've done it once and you decide that you want to do it again and try again, maybe you could do a sunset. So you could try a different kind of day or a picture in the daytime. You could try lots of different varieties. Okay, so we're going to let that dry just a little bit, and I'm going to come down here, down to my hills. Now, when you're painting landscapes, the hills in the very distance are always lighter than the hills in the front. So I'm going to look for kind of purpley colours. You could use reddy colours as well, or you could do green if you really want to use green for grass. But you want 3 different tones. So I'm going to start off with a light blue. I know I just said I'm going to do purple, but I'm going to do a light blue on this hill in the back, which is that one and this tiny one here. And I'm going to add a bit of purple to the blue, and it will just make it a bit like Queensland burgundy, the colour of the Broncos, that kind of colour. Then my next hill, I'm going to make it a bit darker. So I've gone for a brighter burgundy. You don't have to have burgundy. If you don't want it, you can use green. I just thought it might be nice and warm and rich as a colour. And then this front hill, I want it to be darker and stronger. So I'm going to use a darker purple. Right across. And I'm going to go and paint all of that rock that Hogwarts was sat on. I'm going to paint that in this purple as well. That kind of rock thing that we created at the beginning. So I'm painting that one in. So it just leaves the water. If you decide that you don't like the colours that you've painted, then just add another colour. So maybe this one's too red and you think, oh, I don't want it as red as that. Add a bit of blue and it will make it a bit more shadowy. Like that. And then these front ones, I'm going to add a bit of black into because it's a silhouette. It's the darkest part of our painting. So just a tiny bit of black. And the same with this rock that Hogwarts is sat on. I'm going to add some black onto top of my purple. I want some of the purple to show because maybe the moon is hitting the hill and it's shining it a little bit. Why don't I bring that forward for you so you can have a good look at how I've done those colours. So you can see there's a really light colour in the background. Then this one started off with the pinky colour and then I added a bit of blue. And this one was purple and I added a touch of black. And there's my big rock that Hogwarts is sat on. So while I've got the black on my brush, I'm going to add some black into my sky. Now, here's a top tip. Don't put too much on. You don't want it to suddenly go crazy. You just want a little bit of, oh, that's not even enough. Let me get some more black. A little bit of black at the very top of your painting, at the darkest point of the night sky. And I'm just going to use my wet brush to make it kind of disappear into the blue. Just like it does in the sky at night time when you see it suddenly goes from blue to black. Just enough, just a tiny bit, little bit under here. You're doing really well, guys. It just stops it looking kind of like a day sky and makes it look more like a nighttime sky. If you want to get super creative, you could perhaps put in a Dementor or something scary in the sky, or some bats flying if you wanted to. But I'm keeping mine as a nice happy picture with my phoenix flying through. So that's as much of the black as I'm going to put in. If you want to add more, you can. Just enough to make the sky look like it's a little bit dark. All right, while that sky's drying, we're going to go back down to our water. Now, I want to add a tiny bit of yellow just underneath where the moon is, like this. And look how I'm holding my brush. I'm holding my brush like this. So I'm not painting down like we have been. I'm holding it and I'm going like this, side to side. And it makes the lines go side to side. So this is the reflection of my moon in the water. And I'm doing the yellow first because I want the yellow to dry. If we suddenly do blue, it's all going to go green. So I'm just going to do the yellow underneath my moon, and then I'm going to wash my brush. And I'm now going to use my little brush because I want to paint Hogwarts in, and I want my Hogwarts to be super black. So I've just got black on my brush and I'm going to paint it. Or if you're using textures, then you can start to use a marker or a Sharpie to colour it in. And other than the windows, I'm just going for jet black on this. So you can add little bits like this, or you can add gargoyles or details, little fences. You can make it your own, a little flag on the top if you wanted to. But we want it to be in silhouette because the moon is so bright, it's making everything in shadow. And that will make our phoenix really pop with colour. So you can see how by drawing it in rectangles and shapes and triangles was super easy, because now we're just covering over all of our drawing lines and it looks like you've just drawn an amazing castle. So if you've done a castle like this today and it's in silhouette, why don't you try a fairy castle, children? Or a Minecraft castle. You can play around. Now you know the shapes to create your castle. You could do lots of different varieties over the holidays, couldn't you? It's just, I'm going around my door because I'm going to paint my door a different colour. Painting in the rest of the castle like this. And now I've got to be a little bit trickier doing these arches, but I reckon it's just an arch shape, like a little mini rainbow. And luckily it's not lots of different colours, it's just black. So we should be able to, if you're doing this with a marker pen, super easy. Just fill in the gaps. Nearly done. Just doing that last bit of the, and like I say, after you have coloured it in black, maybe you think you want some extra details, you can put some extra details in, can't you? I love Harry Potter. This holiday I had a couple of art classes. We made some cool mandrakes and prophecy balls, and we just made them out of junk. I'm a big fan of using materials that you have at home, egg cartons and things like that. So we just use things out of junk. Okay, the last little turret. And if you're enjoying these classes, parents and children, I'm going to be providing lots of these home tutorials for you on your SharePoint drive. They'll be already recorded, so you'll be able to start them and stop them. You'll be able to rewind them and pause them and do them again and again. I've got a couple up there already, but there's more coming. There's little tiny doodles on Post-it notes, and then there's more extensive little drawings that you can do with coloured pencils or watercolours. And you can do them at any time. They're here to give you a bit of fun, a bit of creative wellness, really, to your busy day and your busy schedule. Okay, my water is nearly dried. Has yours? I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to use my middle brush now, my bigger one. And I'm going to paint in the water. And when I get to the yellow, I'm just going to try and paint the little gaps in between those little stripes that I left. Again, painting using the top of my brush, flicking it along. I'm just going to do one colour first, and then I'm going to add a darker blue afterwards. So I'm just using this kind of bluey green colour. If you haven't got a bluey green colour, try and make it yourself. It's just a little bit of blue with a little bit of green. And then once you've got one colour in, you can add some lines like the ripples on the water using a darker blue. Don't worry if it starts to bleed and fade, bleed together. That is the magic of watercolour. We like it when it does that. It looks beautiful. Few ripples right through the yellow, and that's my water. So we've got that lovely watery look. Gosh, we're doing so well. I hope you're having fun at home, and I hope you're keeping up. We've got our Hogwarts done. Oh, let me paint in the door. I think I'm going to do a little bit of brown and a little bit of purple. We've got the rock that Hogwarts is sat on. We've got our landscape in the background, our beautiful moon, our sky reaching up to the darkness of the night. So we only have one thing left to paint, and that is our gorgeous phoenix. Now, let me move my clip. Just as we painted before, we're going to start with lightest first. If you only have one colour orange, and you're using coloured pencils, then you can get different colours by how hard you press with your pencil. If you press really light, you'll get a soft, light orange. If you press harder, you'll get a harder orange, a much brighter orange. Or you can add red on top, and that will get you a darker orange. If you're using textures or felt tip pens, then do what I said before and just leave some gaps in between your colour and mesh the colours together. If you're using just your pencil, then when you come to do it, just use different pressures to get the different colour change. So a darker pressure might be the reddy colour, the lighter pressure might be the yellowy colour. Or you could use a highlighter. Doesn't really matter, does it? Okay, so I'm going to start off with my lightest orange. I have 2 oranges and a red. Now, the great thing about brushes like this is that they're pretty good shape for feathers. So I can put my brush in like this and I can flick it up, and it kind of is a really good feather shape. Now, you don't want to go over all of the yellow that you've painted. You want some yellow just flying in behind. But we're painting up to this part here. This part here, children, is the bone in a wing of a bird. Bit like our arm bone, and all the feathers come into our arm bone. So you want to take your paint all the way to that bone. And then we're going to paint downwards, following that curve. You don't have to cover every single piece because we're going to add another tone of orange in a minute. You don't have to cover, you can have some white showing through. And some of the yellow showing through, which is that lovely brightness at the end. Okay, now I'm going to do all of the body. If I push down on my brush, look, my brush goes nice and wide and it covers the paper really quickly. Nice and wide, round the tummy, like this. And then just like we did with the wings, we're going to start at the bottom of our tail, push down. Oh, I've got a drip, save my drip. Push down and go up. And that will make it look like the rounded feathers at the end. There we go. So I've got some of that yellow showing and just that first layer of orange. Oh, let me do his head. Okay. Now I'm going to go for a darker orange. And I'm going to do the same again. Up towards where the bone of the wing would be. Just pushing it up towards my top of the wing. Like that. And then I'm going to get that line to go down. So you start to get that lovely feathery effect on the edge here. And I'm going to do the other wing that way. Now when it comes to the body, I'm going to start to dab like this. Can you see? I'm using the edge of my brush and I'm just dabbing it down to give it kind of feathers on the tummy. So the light orange pops through and the dark orange is on top, or the darker orange, to about there. And then we're going to do those big swoopy lines for the tail feathers. Don't worry if your colours blend together a little bit, that's okay, that's what watercolour does. Mine's definitely a little bit drippy because it's upright, but that's okay, I'm alright with that. Now just to give it a little bit more depth, we want to add a third colour. This could be red, or if you've got another orange, it could be another orange. I'm going to use red for mine because I don't have another orange. So I'm making sure I get lots of paint in my bristles by rubbing it over my paint a couple of times. And I'm going to start off and I'm going to do the curve where the wing is, like that. So it's like a shadow underneath where the wing joint is. And now I'm going to go and kind of go over my pencil lines that I drew very first. And it kind of creates an outline with the darker colour. And you can see mine are dripping, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. It looks pretty. Looks pretty. Gonna do a bit more dark, and then I'm gonna add some extra darkness over the body. Just using those dabbing motions. Make it look like tummy feathers. And then a bit more, and I'm gonna go and get these lovely rich tail feathers in. I'm gonna do a couple of little ones underneath, over the top of the sky. Just some little loose ones, and a couple off the top of his head in that red. How you going? You doing all right? Starting to look nearly done, isn't it? So I'm going to use the same colour that I used for the Hogwarts door, a little bit of brown and a little bit of purple to put his beak. And can you see I'm just curving that beak a little bit round, a bit further than we did on our first drawing, and I'm going to put an eye there. Hopefully that doesn't drip down because it's upright. It shouldn't, it might do. I might have to just quickly dab it. Oh, it might not, might do. There. It's kind of like a hook. Like that curves down. And then finally with my purple, I'm just going to do some darker lines. If you're using textures or crayons, you could use, I wouldn't use a black, I would try and use a purple. And we're just going to add some extra tiny dark lines. And it just adds a little bit more contrast between the brightness of our beautiful phoenix that's flying over Hogwarts and reminding us all that even in the darkest of days, when times are really tricky, beautiful things emerge, and when times are hard and sad things happen, there's always the dawn of another day, and we can learn from what we've been through. I won't say our mistakes, because COVID-19 isn't something that anybody's done intentionally, but it has certainly been a tricky old time for us all. But the most important thing is that we embrace new opportunities and enjoy the change and the challenge. And who knew 6 months ago that I'd be sat here doing art with you? I've had a wonderful time today. You've managed to create that fabulous painting in less than an hour, which just shows you exactly what you can do. You don't need to have a massive great art studio. You don't need to drive somewhere to do art classes. You can do it straight from home. You can do it with your children. During lockdown, I did lots of art classes with my family, and you know, it's something that I love to do, and it's something that they enjoyed doing with me. So enjoy the time, it's very precious. Give yourself a bit of a break. You deserve it. You work hard, and RACQ are amazing to allow you all of these fantastic experiences. And they're basically gifting you a good old Wello break. So well done. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.